There is more fresh water floating in the air above you right now than in every river on Earth combined. Not underground, not locked in a glacier somewhere you will never reach. Above you, in the air, you are breathing this moment. And almost nobody is collecting it. Here is a setup that pulls some of that water straight out of the air while you sleep. No pump, no filter, no electricity. About $12. Hardware store within driving distance of your house carries everything you need. You have tried buying water. You have tried storing it. You have thought about wells, about rain barrels, about filtration systems that cost more than your refrigerator. And the whole time, a real freshwater resource within reach of your property has been sitting right above your roof, invisible, and nearly free. Here is what I want you to understand before anything else. The air in a typical yard on a typical night in summer is carrying somewhere between 1 and 4% of its total volume as water vapor. That does not sound like much until you do the arithmetic. It's well established in hydrology that the atmosphere holds more fresh water at any given moment than all the rivers on Earth combined. Engineers have known this for over a century, and nobody selling water systems has a reason to put this in front of you. But first, I want to show you where this idea comes from, because it is not mine, and it is not new. Now, the history of this method, and there is a real irony in where it comes from. I first saw this done in Nagano, on the slope behind my grandfather's property, where he had stretched a length of fine cotton mesh between two cedar posts and set a clay dish at the base. He did not explain it the first morning. He just pointed to the dish. There was water in it. Later I learned that people in dry climates have done this for a very long time. Some archaeologists believe ancient stone mounds in the Negev desert were built deliberately to condense and channel dew. That theory is debated, but the practice of deliberately collecting dew and fog is not in question. The Incas used vertical textile panels on the coastal fog belt of Peru. Fog collectors are still operating in Chile, in Morocco, in Eritrea. Commercial fog nets stretched across hillsides in those regions collect thousands of liters per day in the right conditions. Week on this channel, one honest fix for your home and your yard. 30 years of methods, tested by hand, nothing sold to you. If that is useful to you, subscribe and the next one will find you. The engineering principle at work is called radiative cooling combined with hygroscopic condensation. Hygroscopic means water attracting. Radiative cooling means a surface exposed to open sky at night loses heat faster than the air around it, drops below the dew point, and water begins to form on it. That is the process you want. A spider's web does this every morning without any spider doing anything except spinning a mesh with high surface area and thin strands. The spider did not invent this. Physics did. The spider just figured it out before we did. Commercial unit that applies this same principle costs about $3,000. It uses electricity, a refrigeration coil, and a fan. And it will typically outproduce the passive version. It's actively forcing the cooling instead of waiting for the night to provide it. But it costs 250 times as much and needs a wall outlet to run. Honestly, just skip it. That gap is the answer. There's no repeat purchase, no service contract, and no margin in a $12 mesh you build once. That's why you've never seen it on a shelf. Here is what to build. You need 4 things. A roll of shade mesh, sometimes called shade cloth, the kind sold for garden use with very fine synthetic strands, about $7 for a 6 by 10 foot section. A few lengths of thin PVC pipe or wooden dowel to build a simple frame, about $3 worth. A shallow collection tray or a funnel and a clean food-grade container. Already in most households, a roll of garden wire or zip ties to secure the mesh to the frame, $1 or $2. Total cost is $10 to $12. The mesh is the only thing you are buying for its physics. Everything else is structure and collection. The frame goes together like a kite frame or a simple garden trellis. 2 vertical lengths, 2 horizontal cross pieces, the mesh stretched taut across the face of it. The tension matters. A loose, sagging mesh sheds water before it can accumulate. A mesh pulled flat and firm lets droplets form and run down toward the collection edge, which is where you position the tray or funnel. Angle matters. You want the face of the mesh tilted toward open sky, not toward a wall or a roofline. The cooling effect that causes condensation comes from radiative heat loss toward the open atmosphere. Block the sky view and you reduce the effect significantly. Set the frame at roughly 30 degrees from vertical, leaning back slightly toward the stars. And the physics works cleanly. Placement matters. You want the unit positioned away from any heat source. Paved surface, a wall that absorbed sun all day, and outdoor light left on overnight, all of those raise the local air temperature and reduce condensation. A grassy area and open corner of the yard away from the house works better. My father in Nagano used to say that the coldest corner of a property is always the one the house forgets. That is where dew forms first in the morning. That is where you set the frame. Secure the collection edge. The mesh should funnel toward one low point, and at that point you secure a thin strip of silicone or a bent gutter piece to direct the water into the tray. The collection rate is low at first. Expect drops, not a stream, but drops across a mesh surface that is 6 by 10 feet accumulate faster than intuition suggests. Here are the numbers. My first night running this setup here in this yard, mid-July, temperature dropped to the upper 50s by 2 in the morning. I collected just over half a liter by sunrise. Not dramatic, but half a liter of clean water from an empty piece of air overnight with no moving parts and no electricity is not nothing. In humid climates, coastal regions, late summer when the dew point is high, single units with this mesh area collect between 1 and 2 liters per night. A person needs roughly 2 liters of drinking water a day as a baseline. Call it 8 liters for a family of 4. One unit in a humid climate covers a meaningful fraction of that for one person, not the whole household. Scale the mesh area if you need more. Tell me in the comments what your average summer nighttime temperature is, and roughly what part of the country or region you are in. I read every one. Now I have to be honest with you about what this will not do. In an arid desert with low humidity and warm nights, the yield drops sharply. This is not a replacement for a well or a municipal supply in normal times. What it is, and I want to say this plainly, is a real functioning source of clean water that costs $12 to build and nearly nothing to run. As a contingency, as a supplement, as a first step in a larger system, it is more practical than almost anything else at this price. I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me. Now, a few safety points, and I will not skip them. Condensate, collected from clean mesh in clean air, starts out close to distilled water. It has not touched soil. It has not sat in a tank long enough to develop biological activity on its own. But it collects on an outdoor mesh exposed all night to dust, insects, and whatever lands on it. So treat it the way you'd treat any collected water. Boil it for 1 minute or run it through a filter rated to remove bacteria and protozoa, not just a carbon filter. That takes 5 minutes, and it's the difference between a genuinely useful water source and a genuine risk. In a real emergency, boiling is the simplest and most reliable option you have. In areas with significant air pollution, near heavy traffic, near agricultural spray zones, carbon filter pass, in addition, adds a reasonable margin against chemical residue. That's a $15 filter from any hardware store, and it serves the same container for months. Do not use aluminum mesh. Use synthetic fabric mesh only. Aluminum can contribute metallic ions to the condensate over time, particularly in acidic air conditions. The shade cloth sold for gardens is polyethylene or polypropylene. That is what you want. If you want to scale this, 2 frames double the output. A larger mesh face, say 8 by 12 feet, scales collection in proportion to surface area. The limiting factor is always dew point and the temperature differential between the mesh and the surrounding air. More surface area captures more of what the physics allows. Positioning units on the north side of a yard, away from any structure that retains daytime heat, improves performance meaningfully. There is more fresh water in the air around the planet right now than in every river on Earth combined. 2 nights ago, that idea was abstract. Tonight, it is a mesh frame, a $12 build, and a tray sitting at the cold edge of your yard. Set it up before bed. Boil or filter what you collect before you drink it. Walk away. See what collects by morning. Next week, how to extend this into a full passive water system using gutters and buried cisterns for less than the cost of a single load of landscaping gravel.